I'm Jack Driscoll. This is Becky Luzier. She's with the Black Hawk Family Relief Fund. And Becky, I'll turn it over to you. We finished up in our last segment a little bit about some of the events you're doing and activities. Maybe if you want to continue along that vein and help people know what you're all about, what you're doing, and what they can do to get involved.
Okay, so we wrapped that last show talking about the MARC, which is the Multi-Agency Resource Center. That's going to be tomorrow from 2 to 6 p.m. at the Bethel Park Community Center. That's where affected victims from the flooding can go and get access to some of the larger organizations that exist to help people in this kind of situation.
So that's July 6th?
Correct, July 6th. And then also on July 7th, in the parking lot of the Advanced Auto Parts on Route 88, the Bethel Park High School cheerleaders are going to be doing a car wash from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So let's hope for sun. But if it's raining, you still have a really good reason to come out and get your car washed. And the Bethel Park High School cheerleaders are going to be running that. All of the proceeds from that car wash will come directly to the fund. And I thank especially the Bethel Park sports teams that have stepped up big. That's before I knew anyone else in Bethel. Yeah. My sports family at Bethel Park High School was my family as I got more, into the community. So I thank all of the coaches. Jeff Matheny, the football program, has been huge in sending out his kids. I think almost every day last week they were out in the community doing some heavy lifting, so to speak. Boys and girls basketball.
I heard about them being out there.
Yes. Boys and girls basketball helped us go through all of the supplies that were left over after the Schoolhouse Arts Building hours closed, put those into packages, and then deliver them out into people who still were looking for those supplies to clean up. And I'm sure there are other sports that have been involved. Those are just a couple of the ones that I had direct communication with while we were setting up. On July 22nd, there's going to be a community yard sale at Ruthford Ball Field over by Ruthford Church across from Ruthford Market. So with all of the things I'm talking about, these fundraisers are being run by members of the community who wanted to use them as an opportunity to raise funds for the Black Hawk Family Relief Fund. They are not being run by the Black Hawk Family Relief Fund. Okay. So I think that's an important distinction. So that way, when you ask a question and somebody may not know the answer to it, I don't want anybody to think that that means because something isn't positively going on with that this isn't a legitimate fundraiser. But we just simply, we're not a 30-person organization. We didn't have the ability to take on, 5 or 10 different fundraisers for the fund, but we did have the ability to facilitate communication between members of the community that wanted to work together to do some of these fundraisers. And information about that and how to get into contact with the people that are organizing that is on our Facebook page, is also on the Citizens of Bethel Park Facebook page. These are living documents that grow, so you might have to scroll through and look. And we'll also have information about that up on our website as soon as we get that up and running. And then August 12th, there's also going to be a community festival at IMS, at Independence Middle School. And that is being organized by a group of women who I have to say are some of the first people who stepped up and said, how can we put together some kind of a fundraiser to help you guys? And that will be a day-long event. There will be several food vendors. There'll be music. There'll be activities for families. Kind of an opportunity for us to all come together and enjoy some fellowship together as a community after everything we've been through, and then be able to use all of those funds that we're spending that day on entertaining ourselves, towards the fund. So that's another fundraiser that's affiliated with us but not run by us. The only things that we are directly linked in terms of being the organizers of when it comes to the fundraising is that GoFundMe account that we spoke about in the previous show, the bank account at Citizens Bank, where you can make a donation to Black Hawk Family Relief Fund. Then also, like I said, Bethel Presbyterian Church on Bethel Church Road's collecting gift cards for us 10 to 4, Monday through Friday. And then we also are working with Custom Ink, which is an online t-shirt fundraising provider where you can go on and buy a t-shirt with our logo on it. All of the profits that we receive back from Custom Ink for the sale of those t-shirts goes directly into the fund, and there's links available to that t-shirt fundraiser on our Facebook page, again on the Citizens of Bethel Park Facebook page, and then that will go on our website as well. And I know that there are a lot of different organizations out there that are doing collections within themselves. We referenced in the last show that we had the 20 donation jars out of businesses. Those are coming in now, and they'll be going out to 20 new businesses. You can certainly send us an email at blackhawkfamilyrelieffund@yahoo.com if you don't currently have a donation jar at your business and you know you're not in the next 20 rollout, but you want to maybe be included in the 20 rollout after that of the jars. But we know there's a lot of groups that have been collecting, at their businesses or at their churches or at their community groups. The Lions Club gave us a nice donation. I was yesterday at the Bethel St. Clair Rotary breakfast where they did a collection around the table, and it's my understanding that their board's also going to meet about doing some more for us. I mentioned in the last show we had some churches that had made some donations. The employees of the Kohl's over by South Hills Village, they got together and did a collection and bought some Kohl's cards to donate to the fund that people could use for housewares or clothing, or really kind of, Kohl's got a lot of stuff, so whatever you might have lost in the flooding that you needed as part of the recovery. Caruso Hair and Aesthetics on Donati was the first people at Schoolhouse Arts last week when we opened up for donations in terms of a collection that they had as a shop had taken up as a salon to make a donation to us, and they also came bearing cookies, which was great because that was nice for the volunteers that were working that night. So I know there's a lot of companies and businesses that are probably out there still doing collections in their offices. We thank you for that. It is hugely helpful, and I do encourage people to inquire about what sort of donation matching might be in place at your company. It's not always super common at small businesses, but a lot of larger companies do have a donation matching program, and they would probably require the 501c3 distinction, which means that we would be able to run that through the Bethel Park Community Foundation, because they did approve a letter at their last meeting, so that we have the ability to access those funds as well. And if you have any questions about that, you can email us at blackhawkfamilyrelieffund@yahoo.com, and I can help get you copies of whatever you might need in order to have access to some of those funds. And I think that kind of now people are starting to think, okay, we're 2 weeks out. What can we do now, to help you? And yes, all of the ways we've mentioned that you can support us from a financial standpoint, but we're also continuing to try to match up volunteers that want to work with families that need it. The type of work that we're doing is probably going to start transitioning at this point. It's not going to be tons of, flood cleanup in terms of in people's homes. I think a lot of that has been accomplished in the last 2 weeks, but the rebuild is certainly not finished in any way, shape, or form. Right. So we're going to need people just as much in the coming weeks as we have in the 2 weeks so far to give. And I think probably more in a rebuild, sort of in the vein of the Habitat for Humanity concept of volunteers helping with, under the supervision of construction people, contractors, carpenters, people that know what they're doing. I know that some of the churches want to do a day where their congregation could adopt a house that is in the rebuild process, where they could work under somebody for painting, or, some of the more basic sort of carpentry skills that a lot of people could do if they had someone demonstrate it for them once, So we do see that becoming important. Nice. Yeah, and then continuing to share our links to the T-shirt, to the GoFundMe, with anyone that you think might be interested in donating. And I think one of the things that also came out of this, which I think is just so representative of Bethel Park's mentality in terms of supporting each other and having the back of the people that were there for you, is there is a lot of people who want to support the businesses that have been part of our relief efforts and have worked in coordination with us. And we have started a thread on the Citizens of Bethel Park Facebook page where we are sharing information on businesses that gave, whether they donated food, whether they donated gift cards, money, labor. We have some members of our community who have really stepped up in terms of giving of their own time. And everybody who's a member of the fund board of directors, everyone, those moderators of the Citizens of Bethel Park page that I spoke of, we are all private citizens with our own jobs and our own families. So a lot of people have given up a lot of their own time, taken personal time off, put things aside that would have normally been right on their plate, as a professional, things that ways they paid their own bills to give of themselves to give, to help these families that were affected. So we have started that thread. And again, because Facebook is a living document, you're going to probably have to, swipe through and scan through the posts a little bit on the Facebook page to find it. And we will get that up on our website when that's up and running. We do want to create a central point. The website is not going to be, 6 and 7 different tabs and all this stuff. It's really just going to be a bulletin board of sorts for us to post information that you can access without having to really look, around too much for it.
It's funny you say that with the businesses that have stepped up, not just the individuals. I have talked to a couple of the homeowners, and they keep telling me this Jim Jenkins landscaping truck was out here with employees and lugging all this because all these and Michael's storage bins and all, and this I guess Jim Jenkins Landscaping, and and then I go to another homeowner, Jim Jenkins Landscaping, and I say, who is this Jim Jenkins Landscaping?
And him and his wife Lisa
but
are
these businesses
superheroes.
are really plugged in.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of people, like I have said, they're giving in the way that they can give. So whatever their skill set is, they're giving of themselves. We have a couple contractors that have been providing service to the families that were the worst affected. So if your electrical panel was cut off because it became wet and you can't go home until you have electricity, those people, Dave Spinneweber and Chris Van Dyke, are 2 private citizens who have been working like as much as any of us. I know I'm the face right now of the recovery effort, but there are so many people out there that are giving of themselves. And we had Cocoa Bake Shop step up, and they wanted to do something to allow us to, do something small to thank the volunteers. None of these people, to be clear, want recognition. They all shy away from it. They don't want us to know. They don't want people to know. Jim and Lisa Jenkins have been amazing and have been so important to the recovery effort. And if they see this, they're probably both going to cringe because they don't even want that kind of recognition. That's not why they're doing it. But they have been huge. And so Cocoa Bake Shop made these cookies for us, or is in the process of making them, and we're going to be delivering those cookies to our private citizen volunteers, so not the businesses necessarily, but just the people who rolled their sleeves up, didn't wait for anybody else to come and fix it, for the neighbor, fix it for their neighbor themselves. And one thing we are doing for the businesses is we are creating some signage for businesses to indicate that they were supportive of the fund during the rebuild process, whether that be monetarily or supplies, donations of food. And we have the first kind of runoff of those cards. Thank you to Bethel Printing, because Bethel Park Printing has been hugely one of the guys over there, Tom Gavitt, is on my fund board, and he's been hugely helpful, as has everyone over there, at getting things out to us quickly that we needed just kind of run off in the early stages of this. But we are creating those business signs. We're going to start getting them out because we really wanted to thank the businesses in our community who stepped up. We wanted people to be able to get out of their cars, and if they're looking at one of the strip mall type areas, and I'm here to get something to eat, to be able to identify who here supported the relief fund, so that that's where I can spend my dollars, because that has been a very clear message by our citizens that if you were part of the relief fund, that they want you to get their pizza money, their hoagie money, whatever, their storage money, they want you to get their dollars as consumers as a thank you for what you did for the people around you. So we are working on making sure that we have some recognition, some information in place so people can identify those people and those businesses that did so much and did so much of the heavy lifting. Because, like, folks, without those people, without the larger network of the relief effort, that what Sydney and Lauren and Courtney and I did in terms of organization and creating an infrastructure so that we could help people, none of that would have been advanced if it wasn't for the actual unaffected people. And now, to be clear, there's people working on this who also were flooded, but just maybe don't feel that their flooding was as serious as others, and they want to now, help those that got it a little bit worse. So without the members of the community who have stepped up to assist, we would have just been 4 women who wanted to help, not 4 women who had the means to help. The fund would have just been a fund that existed to help people, but wouldn't have had any sort of, ability to actually advance this relief effort forward.
There's another thing to everyone watching and listening, and especially a lot of you business owners. I'd like to ask if you could help us extend the message and extend the communication by the use of maybe putting some of these events up on your business signs so that people driving by who may not be on Facebook get to see this. Maybe you could share this information out on your own Facebook group or your newsletter. So we ask for business help too, to try to help us communicate this through your own venues that you already have in place, the business signage, like I say, any events that you're doing or any newsletters or email that you could help us out with would help a great deal. And even your own Facebook groups, it would help a lot. Correct. Because it's addressing the masses. Sometimes we fish with a lure and we catch one fish, or we fish with a net and catch hundreds of fish, and that's the same concept here. And the other thing I wanted to say is, I know there was a house recently that was like an overwhelming project that people thought there's no way we're going to, as an individual, make any impact on this. And there was a house that had a lot of structural damage and a lot of mud and everything inside there. And you and citizens of Bethel Park had asked for volunteers. And what it turned out was, well, you fill in the rest of that story on what a difference one person can make in mass. Like that single twig versus a handful of twigs. So
we had a residence in Bethel Park that had actually experienced some pretty significant foundation damage from the flooding. So It was a split level home where the water came, and at that point where sort of you would see your siding ends and your block foundation begins, drove through that foundation, knocked some of that foundation wall into the basement below, and filled up that house
through a big hole.
Through a big hole in their foundation came in all of this water and debris. So that house was condemned for a period of time. The family that lived there was not permitted to be on property. They had to get some things in place to shore up the foundation before anyone was even allowed to go inside. But then they also needed things like getting their electrical panel recertified and repaired so that they could have electricity turned back on in the house. That's where I referenced some of these people like Chris Van Dyke and Dave Spinneweber who were on the ground assisting that homeowner. And I don't actually know anything about most of these volunteers as far as like what their professional lives are, if they own businesses or what. Right. I have no idea. I just know them as the people who showed up for our people. Yeah. So I'd love to even plug more, but sometimes these people skirt the recognition so much that we don't know much beyond, what their skill set was and how they were able to give it. Right. So we needed to get this mud and the debris out of the basement of this house. And they needed 50 buckets and conceivably 50 people to come out with the buckets, and they wanted to sort of create like a bucket chain. Yeah. We were calling it the Bucket Brigade, to get that mud out and to get some construction work done there. And Evie, True Hardware, and Andy at Evie has been a huge supporter of these efforts from the very beginning. He donated the buckets, and they were able to get the buckets. Another neighbor who lives down the street from one of the gentlemen that was taking lead on the rehab project here, they donated a small excavator so that we would have access to that. So when we first knew that what we needed to get the house kind of together, we needed somebody to deal with the electrical issues. We needed to get the mud out, and which required buckets and an excavator. So we got all these things in place. And then even when you have those things, if you don't have the labor, those things are just going to sit there. Right. So we had people show up in droves at that address to assist. I know there was at least 30 from what's been communicated to me. Okay. And we had actually the fund had purchased lunch for everyone. We wanted to feed them. And we actually ended up having to call and get lunch a little earlier because the project went faster than they thought it was going to be because of the number of people.
The power of a group.
Yeah, the power of the people that showed up did things so efficiently and so much quicker than they thought. And the level of labor, like the effort that people are putting in when they show up at as volunteers, which I think is probably a little bit representative of like the human spirit. When somebody else needs us, we're willing to do a little bit more, a little bit longer. When we're doing it out of the goodness of our heart for a neighbor or whatever, than what we probably feel like doing at our own house if that was our project type of thing. So we've seen, young people, older people, men, women, kids, like parents showing up with their 6-year-old, their 10-year-old, their 14-year-old, their 18-year-old, and matching up those people and those with their different abilities were with different needs, so that we were putting the right people in the right places to help them assist with the projects.
How do they contact you? How do they get involved?
So we're continuing to use that Citizens of Bethel Park Facebook page and the Black Hawk Family Relief Facebook page as sort of a jumping off point for connecting volunteers with the people that they can volunteer to help. You can also send an email to blackhawkfamilyrelieffund@yahoo.com. We've also been sourcing physical donations through all of this. So if people who had something to donate to someone who lost something, furniture, clothing, we have a thread going on the Citizens of Bethel Park Facebook page for that.
Okay.
So we really have tried to take a holistic approach addressing all the different ways that people could have been affected by the flooding and being able to connect them with the people that want to help them. The fund and the Facebook pages and even the core group of volunteers, again, without the people to do the things that need to be done, we could have never accomplished that. Even if I match up the board and the 4 women of us, too, one of them's also on the board of the fund with me, we're still talking about, we would have only been maybe 8 or 9 people who knew this huge project needed to be taken on. But without the members of the community who have stepped up to be a part of the rebuild, we wouldn't have been able to accomplish what we've been able to accomplish. And we just look back and think about what things might have been like in the 7 days after the flooding if we hadn't been able to connect volunteers, food, resources, because, and Sydney Litzenberger, who's on our fund board and is also part of the core group of organizers, had said we have to feed, she was the first one who said we have to feed people. Like, people feel less desperate, when they're not hungry. So we've, we will be doing a postmortem with the municipality, so to meet with leaders and figure out how can we be coordinated from the beginning. In the future, if there is a problem, we'll be doing a postmortem with volunteers that we think are kind of part of the fund family now, in terms of how can we sort of jump into action again in the future if needed. God forbid, we hope we never deal with a flood like this again, but no one community is immune to the bad things that can happen in the world, so we want to be better prepared in the future now that we are sort of aware of how powerful we can be as a group, as an organization. We want to be better ready to harness that power in the future to help our citizens. And I got so lucky ending up in Bethel, and I thought that for a really long time, coaching, and you hear about all the crazy stories about what's happening in youth sports as a country, and I've had the best families come through my program in the last 10 years. So I always knew I was lucky, and I would always tease my peers about how, like, I know you think you got it good, but you don't coach in Bethel, and the type of people that we have here are just so special. But we have really seen that during the relief efforts.
I want to thank you for coming in. I want to thank you all for tuning in, watching and listening. Please volunteer or share this information to other people that you feel it may benefit, and also share it with other people that you feel may want to get involved.